everybody. Here we go. The Count of Monte Cristo, Chapter 23, The Prison Register. The day following the events just recorded, a man of about 30 or 32 years of age, clad in a bright blue coat, nankeen trousers, and a white waistcoat, and having both the appearance and the accent of an Englishman, presented himself before the mayor of Marseille. "Monsieur," said he, "I am head clerk of the firm of Thompson and French of Rome. We have had business connections with Morel and Son of Marseille for the last 10 years, involving 100,000 francs or so of our money. As reports are current that the firm is faced with ruin, we are beginning to feel somewhat anxious. So I have come from Rome for the sole purpose of obtaining some information from you in regard to the firm." "I know well enough, monsieur, that misfortune seems to have dogged Monsieur Morel for the past 4 or 5 years," replied the mayor. "He has lost 5 ships, one after the other, and has suffered badly through the bankruptcy of 3 or 4 firms. But though I am his creditor to the extent of some 10,000 francs, it is not my place to give you any information on the state of his finances. If you ask me in my capacity as mayor what I think of Monsieur Morel, I can but answer that he is as honest as is possible for a man to be, and that up to the present he has fulfilled his engagements with absolute punctuality. That is all I can tell you, monsieur. If you wish to know more, apply to Monsieur de Beauvais, inspector of prisons, Rue de Noël, number 15. I believe he has 200,000 francs invested with the firm. If there are really any grounds for apprehension, you will doubtless find him better informed on the subject than I am." The Englishman appeared to appreciate this great delicacy on the part of the mayor, bade him good morning, and with that gait particular to the sons of Great Britain, set off for the street mentioned. Monsieur de Beauvais was in his office. With the coolness of his race, the Englishman put almost the same question to him as he had put to the mayor. "Unfortunately, your fears are only too well founded, monsieur," exclaimed Monsieur Beauvais, "and you see before you a ruined man. I have 200,000 francs in that firm, and they are to constitute the dowry of my daughter, who is to be married in a fortnight. 100,000 francs of this sum was redeemable on the 15th of this month, and another 100,000 francs on the 15th of the next month. I notified Monsieur Morel of the fact that I desire to have the payment punctually made, and here he comes hardly an hour back and tells me that if his ship, the Pharaon, does not return by the 15th, he will find it impossible to effect the payment. It looks very much like bankruptcy." "Then, monsieur, you fear for your money. I consider it as good as lost. Well then, I will buy it for you." "You will, but at an enormous discount, I presume." "No, for 200,000 francs. Our firm does not conduct business in that way," he added with a smile. "What is more, I will pay you cash down." The Englishman took from his pocket a bundle of banknotes amounting to about double the sum Monsieur de Beauvais was fearful of losing. An expression of joy lit up Monsieur de Beauvais' face, but he restrained his feelings and said, "I must warn you, monsieur, that in all probability you will not get 6% of that sum." "That has nothing to do with me," was the reply. "It is the affair of Thompson and French, for whom I am acting. It may be that it is to their interest to hasten the ruin of a rival firm. What do I know, monsieur? What I do know, monsieur, is that I am ready to hand over this sum in exchange for a deed of assignment. All I require of you is a commission." "That is but just, monsieur," exclaimed Monsieur de Beauvais. "The commission is generally 1.5. Do you want 2, 3, 5%, or even more? You have only to say the word." "I am like my firm, monsieur," replied the Englishman with a smile. "I do not conduct business on those lines. My commission is nothing entirely different. You are the inspector of prisons, are you not?" "I have been for the last 14 years and more." "Do you keep a register of entrances and dismissals?" "Of course." "Are there any notes in the register pertaining to the different prisons?" "Each prisoner has his dossier." "Well, monsieur, I was educated at Rome by a poor old abbé who suddenly disappeared. Later, I learned that he had been detained in the Château d'If, and I should like to know some details in regard to his death." "What was his name?" "The Abbé Faria." "Oh, yes, I remember him perfectly. He died last February." "You have a good memory, monsieur. I remember this case because the poor fellow's death was accompanied by a very peculiar circumstance. The Abbé's dungeon was about 45 or 50 feet from that of a Bonapartist agent, one of those who had greatly contributed to the return of the usurper in 1815. He was a a very determined and dangerous man. Really, said the Englishman. Yes, was the reply. I had an opportunity of seeing this man myself in 1816 or 17. We could only go down to his dungeon accompanied by a file of soldiers. He made a deep impression on me, and I shall never forget his face. The Englishman gave the ghost of a smile. Edmond Dantes was the man's name, continued the inspector, and he must have either procured some tools or else made some, for a passage was found by means of which the two prisoners communicated with one another. The passage was doubtless made with a view to escape? Exactly, but unfortunately for the prisoners, the abbé was seized with an attack of epilepsy and died. I understand that must have put an end to their plans. As far as the dead man was concerned, it certainly did. But for the one who lived, on the contrary, Dantes saw a means of effecting his escape more easily. He doubtless thought the prisoners who die in the Château d'If are buried in an ordinary cemetery, so he carried the corpse into his own cell and took its place in the sack in which it had been sewn up and waited for the burial. The Château d'If has no cemetery, however. The dead are simply thrown into the sea with a cannonball attached to their feet. Is that really so? Exclaimed the Englishman. Yes, monsieur, continued the inspector. You may imagine the fugitive's astonishment when he felt himself being hurled down the rocks. I should like to have seen his face in that moment. That would have been somewhat difficult. Never mind, said Monsieur de Beauville, for whom the certainty of getting his 200,000 francs had put into a good humor. Never mind, I can imagine it. And he burst out laughing. I can also imagine it, said the Englishman with a forced laugh. So I suppose the fugitive was drowned. But if he was, no doubt some official report must have been made on the occurrence. Oh yes, the death certificate was made out. You see, his relatives, if he had any, might be interested to know whether he was dead or alive. Would you like to see what documents we have relating to the poor abbé? It would give me great pleasure, replied his companion. Let us go to my office, then. And they both passed into the office of Monsieur de Beauville. Everything was in perfect order. Each register had its number, each dossier had its file. The inspector gave the Englishman his easy chair, set before him the register and the dossier relating to the Château d'If, and let him look through them at his leisure, while he himself sat in a corner of the room and read his paper. The Englishman had no difficulty in finding the dossier relating to Abbé Faria. It appeared as though the story which the inspector had related greatly interested him, for after having perused the first documents, he turned over the leaves until he reached the deposition respecting Edmond Dantes. There he found everything arranged in due order. The denunciation, the examination, Morel's petition, Monsieur de Villefort's martial notes. He folded up the denunciation noiselessly and put it into his pocket, read the examination and noted that the name of Nozier was not mentioned in it, perused too the application dated 10th of April 1815, in which Morel, on the deputy's advice, exaggerated with the best intentions, for Napoleon was then on the throne, the services Dantes had rendered to the imperial cause, services which Villefort's certificate rendered incontestable. Then he saw through it all. The petition to Napoleon, kept back by Villefort, had become under the Second Restoration a terrible weapon against him in the hands of the Procureur du Roi. On searching further, he was no longer astonished to find the register the following remarks placed in brackets against his name. Edmond Dantes, bracket. An inveterate Bonapartist took an active part in the return from the Isle of Elba, to be kept in solitary confinement and under strict supervision. He compared the writing of the bracketed remarks with that of the certificate placed beneath Morel's petition, and felt convinced they were both in the same handwriting. They were both written by Villefort. Thanks, said the Englishman, closing the register with much noise. I have all I want. Now it is my turn to perform my promise. Give me a simple assignment of your credit, acknowledge therein receipt of the cash, and I will hand you over the money. He rose, gave his seat at the desk to Monsieur de Beauville, who took it without ceremony and drew up the required assignment, while the Englishman counted out the banknotes on the ledge of the filing cabinet. And that was chapter 23. Any guesses who the Englishman is? I'll see you all next time. Have a good day.